Breaking news, said a female news anchor. Recently, Midoriya Izuku announced he had created a brand new, super orphanage, known as Mirai Orphanage. Set on an island off Japan's shores, this orphanage would be the size of a large city, capable of housing millions. People, of course, were confused as to why Midoriya would create such a large structure and sink so much money and resources into it. After all, how could he possibly fill such a large orphanage? Said a male news anchor. Well, that was revealed in shocking fashion. Over the last week, the Midoriya Foundation quickly acquired orphanages and orphans from all around the world, taking these orphans over to the island to become part of his orphanage, giving Midoriya a monopoly on orphans. I think that's a whole new sentence, the female reporter said. Governments around the world were stunned by this sudden development, and many of them quickly took action to try and stop Midoriya from continuing his orphan gathering. However, these efforts were seemingly fruitless, as Midoriya continued his worldwide semi-adoption, using even legally questionable means to keep going. The male reporter said, Midoriya has now taken an estimated 92 million orphans. Likely more, as Midoriya Foundation agents collected orphans on the street as well, meaning there are still millions of children that were taken that weren't included in that count. Naturally, something this massive has sparked several reactions from governments worldwide, most notably China, who has threatened to declare war on Japan if the children are not returned. The newswoman said, some other nations have made the same or similar threats. Most nations, such as the United States, have opted to open negotiations with the Midoriya Foundation and the Japanese government, while some other governments have opted to ignore the situation altogether. The Japanese government has stated they have no intention to interfere with the Midoriya Foundation's activities. The newsman said, the Midoriya Izuku gave a statement saying that he disliked the oftentimes horrible ways orphans were treated worldwide, and thus decided to take matters into his own hands, and that he has no intention of returning any of the orphans. In response to claims of war, Midoriya claimed that these are nothing but empty threats, and that the chance of any government choosing to go to war with Japan at this time is nearly zero. The newswoman said, he also said that should a war actually break out, it would end very quickly. The last thing Midoriya said was that he intends to give more information at a later date. The newsman explained. However, Mirai Orphanage already has a website, and while most of its features are to be released at a later date, it does provide information about the various facilities and places on the island, as well as showing several photos. The reaction of the public worldwide seems to be conflicted. While many people seem to think that Midoriya is right in wanting better conditions for orphans and think he will provide for them, they also seem off-put by the shocking way Midoriya went about this. The newswoman said. However, Midoriya's more outspoken detractors have been enraged by this, many of them forming violent mobs and attacking Midoriya Foundation facilities, as well as people working for the Midoriya Foundation and even citizens who support the Midoriya Foundation. The newsman explained. Thankfully, not many people have actually been hurt, and no casualties have come from these attacks, thanks to the work of the Midoriya Foundation Army and the pro-heroes. However, these people are dangerous. Several people have been hospitalized due to attacks from Midoriya Foundation detractors. Remember, if you see any suspicious behavior, keep your distance and report it to the proper authorities. The newswoman said. Speaking of criminal activities, with the Midoriya Foundation Army and the heroes busy dealing with these attacks, plus the aftermath of a recent villain group subjugation, the Sky Pirates were able to raid a Midoriya Foundation facility and steal an unknown amount of materials. Few were harmed, but many fear what these dangerous criminals can do with even more power. Hello, Ms. Prime Minister, Izuku said as he sat back in his office chair, taking a call on his phone. What the actual fuck? The Prime Minister spat. All of the orphans, Midoriya? All of them? You didn't think to tell me before you pulled this shit. I couldn't risk the information leaking out and giving the other countries time to prepare, Izuku explained casually. It already took considerable effort to keep all of this under wraps for long enough for the plan to go through. And it went off without a hitch. Without a hitch. Midoriya, there are nations threatening war. The Prime Minister shouted. You and I both know those threats are empty. They know how powerful I am. They wouldn't risk coming to blows with the Midoriya Foundation unless they absolutely had to. Izuku sighed. And even if they were stupid enough to try and fight us, do you really think any nation in the world is a threat to me right now? You really have gone mad with power. The Prime Minister groaned. What's next? Are you planning to finally just give up the facade and conquer the Earth? Just do whatever you want. Not like I can stop you. And with that, she hung up. Well, that went well, Izuku said as he set down his phone. Despite what one might think, things really had gone smoothly, gathering just as many children as they expected, without anything getting in their way, and without leaving any evidence of law-breaking activity. Of course, the fact that Izuku had broken many laws was obvious, but that didn't matter if no one could prove anything. The other countries weren't any threat either. Literally, all of them could be paid off, and none of them would risk actually trying to pick a fight with him. However, that did add significantly to the ridiculous budget of this project. Honestly, Izuku couldn't remember the last time he looked at a price tag and actually winced. But it would be worth it. For the sake of those poor orphans. The public wouldn't be a problem either. People were wary of this now, but once Mirai Orphanage could be showcased more and people saw just how happy the orphans were, they would quickly forget about this showing of overwhelming power. That was the power of good advertising. And the masses were unlikely to take the side of his serious detractors. Not with his men staging attacks and infiltrating their groups to make them all look like a bunch of maniacs. The only concerning thing was how quiet his enemies were being. He'd heard nothing from the MLA, Stain, or Sing, and they still haven't found the 4-star and 7-star dragons. Izuku could only assume they were gathering strength, which concerned him greatly. But all he could really do at the moment was search for them and develop his own assets. Thankfully, these assets were developing well.
Nameli, yeah.
Shredder's space-cutting blades had done wonders in the weapons development, and said development was now being moved to Angel Island, so as not to create holes in reality over the city. That wasn't the only thing they'd get out of those blades. Despite the limited amount of blades they had, they were capable of doing quite a bit, and were both extremely valuable and dangerous. Enough contemplation. I need to get back to work. I want to finish this before 5 o'clock. Izuku thought as he went back to his paperwork. Back in the center of Daika City, the 6 heads of the MLA met once again. All right, Masuda, what's so important you had to call us all together 1 month before our meeting would have been held anyway? Rayon asked, sounding very annoyed. The fact that none of you already figured that out is upsetting. Did you not hear about what's been happening lately? Masuda sighed. You're talking about Midoriya's recent worldwide child napping scheme antics. Correct. No, he said. Ridiculous as it is, there's not much we can do with that, Sun said. Probably get some more recruits, but that's about it. Wrong, Masuda stated before smirking. My dear comrades, have you ever heard that the enemy of our enemy is our friend? With his latest actions, Midoriya has trampled over the pride of several countries, namely China. I can imagine they're not particularly happy about a Japanese boy wielding godlike power, doing whatever he likes in their country, Hebe said. Especially when Midoriya's response to their outrage was essentially, shut the hell up, I can do what I want. Although he's not particularly wrong. Unless, I see. You're suggesting we gain the favor of the Chinese government and get resources from them. I'm not suggesting it. I've already made deals with them, Masuda said cockily. What? Son? Rayon and Hebe shouted in outrage. You made a decision like that without consulting us? No, he hissed, doing a good job at not flipping out like the other three, but definitely still very upset to put it lightly. Do you understand how impactful such a deal is? Do not treat me like a child, of course I do. Masuda scoffed. You're all worried about us becoming their puppets, right? That's why I had to make a deal with them as quickly as possible. Right now their blood is still boiling. They were desperate for any way to strike at Midoriya. And since we're their only real way of doing it this point is us. If we gave them time to calm down or find other avenues of attacking Midoriya, then this golden opportunity would vanish. Still, it would have been better for you to consult us. No, he restated firmly. Do none of you understand the situation we were in? Masuda sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Until we can create a world run by strength, the current world runs on money, and we lacked the funds to pursue our ambitions. Stealing Midoriya's tech will only get us so far when Midoriya is as cautious as he is. And Gupu, how has progress been going on our Nomu project? Thanks to Dr. Garaki's notes, combined with our own research on genetics and quirks, we have been able to create several blueprints for a new form of Nomu, more suited to our cause. However, given our lack of funds, progress has been slower than I'd like. And there you have it, Masuda said cockily. You can start thanking me now. As much as I hate to say it, you have put us in a better position. Hebe sighed, sounding like she was forcing herself to say that. However, I would still like to remind you that you are part of a council. Masuda rolled her eyes. Yes, I am aware. Now then, other than money, I did get something else you might find interesting. She pulled a red vial out of her pocket and grinned. It's a blood sample from over 200 years ago. A blood sample of the first known human to ever have power granted to them by quirks. And I'm not talking about that glowing baby. This is a blood sample of Leiden Ultimate.